All right, so we are recording. Welcome everyone who are here in our Zoom session face to face, and to those who are watching the recording at home as well. So this week, week 8, we are going to be focusing on the importance of reflection in your teaching and learning. So I popped up a bit of a learning forum outline. I like to do that. I think it's really important for you to have an idea up front of exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to do a really good activity about tuning into the diversity of young people. We're going to look specifically at beliefs and understandings around diversity, and also our personal bias as well. So very much based on our beliefs and our values that are quite historical. So we're going to have a look at that. Then we'll have a look at the week 8 engagement activities, so I can give you some feedback on your responses to the questions for chapter 7, and also it was suggested that you do a little bit of a reflection on the angles activity in the week 6 learning forum that we did. So if you've done that, I'm happy to have a look at it. I'm also happy for you to email me as well. If you have something that you want me to have a look at, I'm very happy to make sure you're on the right track. Then, of course, we're going to unpack assessment task 2 a little bit more. And then there will be an opportunity for you to have a bit of a social catch up as well, which I think is probably, the most important part of the evening in these times, I think. I always find it lovely to catch up with you and see your lovely faces there on screen. Speaking of which, hello Ethan, where are you? You there, Ethan? And we've got Alana there as well. Alana, do you have your camera available? We'll see where they are. Tennille's having her dinner. Excellent. What are you having, Tennille?
Hi, green curry.
Green curry. Actually, that's what I'm having tonight too. Hopefully it will be cooked for me when I go upstairs, and there will be a glass of wine waiting as well. Something to look forward to. Now, who have I got here from the session this morning? Alana, are you from the session this morning?
Yeah, I'm from the session.
Sorry. Yep, you are? Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Kylie's cat. I am so sorry about that. They're doing some work on the cables or something in our street, and it just went every few seconds. It would cut out and then come back in. It was very, very frustrating. It wasn't a good start to my morning, to my day. You know, when you have something that goes pear-shaped and then it impacts on the rest of your day. I'm feeling a lot better now, though. So, Ethan's just trying to set up his camera. All good. All right, so to start with, what I'd like you to do, Kylie, you're going to have to put the cat down because you're going to have to do some drawing. What I'd like you to do is draw up on a piece of paper a positive, negative line like we can see on the slide. So exactly what's outlined there, I'm going to give you a moment to draw it up. And for those of you at home as well, watching the recording, if you could also draw up the positive, negative line. So exactly as you can see on the slide. You know, if you have an iPad or something there in front of you, a touch screen, you could probably draw one up and use your finger with it for that. So we're actually going to physically use it in the next activity. So just very basic. It doesn't have to look beautiful or anything. You don't have to hand it in or share it or show it. So just a nice basic one. So this is a very important part of the next activity. So you really do need to make sure you have this. So we've got 13 participants at this point. Excellent. Give you a little bit more time. Have we got Ethan or have we lost him? Okay, everyone good? Yep, excellent. Okay, so in this first part of our session, we're going to use this, we're calling it a diversity line. We're going to explore some different perspectives, some different scenarios from the perspective of a diverse number of students. So this is really going to help you to consider the diverse characteristics and the context of individual students that you might come across in your future learning environments. And it will also be an opportunity for you to think about the many factors that might impact on their well-being and, of course, their learning as well. Now, I want you to take this activity really seriously, and I want you to very much immerse yourself into it. So you're going to have to put yourself into the character of one of the students. So on the slide are 7 learner profiles that we're going to be using. So for the next 15 minutes or so, as part of this reflective activity, you are actually going to become one of these young people. So you're going to identify which one you are by the first letter of your surname. So my surname is Edwards. So I am going to be in the E, so the E to H. So my learning profile will therefore be a 10-year-old hardworking student with a close circle of friends living with her caring grandparents. Her mum has some serious mental health issues and has some lengthy stays away from home in hospital. So if your surname started with B, then you would be in the A to D learner profile. So I'll give you a moment to work out which one you are. Again, if you're watching the recording, I would like you to do the same and participate in the activity. Okay, so Paris, you're going to be the 11-year-old girl, house captain, talented musician, gets along well with peers and teachers, parents actively engaged in the school and broader community. Who have we got in M to P? Is there anyone in M to P?
Yeah, me, Belinda.
Okay, Belinda. So do you want to read yours out, Belinda?
Yep, 10-year-old boy, very talented artist and athletic, popular with peers, has some difficulty with reading and spelling. Mother struggled to learn at school and is anxious for her son to do better.
Okay. What about A to D? Who have we got in the A to D?
I am. Sophie.
Okay. Sophie, would you like to read that out?
Yep, 9-year-old girl, new to the school, often late for school and comes without lunch or homework, is tired and distracted, gets upset easily and struggles with her schoolwork. Parents are separated and she seems to have a lot of responsibility for her younger siblings. Both.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What we'll do now is I'm going to get you to imagine what things might be like for the young person that is in your learning profile. I want you to take some deep breaths and I want you to close your eyes ready to get into your character. Close your eyes. Imagine you're getting up in the morning to go to school. How would you feel about facing the day ahead as this young person? What would you be thinking about going to school? Are you dreading the day ahead of you, or are you excited? What might you eat for breakfast? Who will get your breakfast for you? What will you talk about in the morning while you're having breakfast? Or will you have someone to talk to? What are you planning to do after school? Okay, open your eyes and be ready to respond to some questions according to what the likely reality might be for this young person. So this is where your positive, negative diversity line comes in. I want you to place your finger on the 0. So you're going to move your finger forward if your answer to the question that I pose is likely, and backwards for unlikely. Don't move your finger if you think it's neither likely nor unlikely, so leave it still. Any questions? Do we all understand where we're going from here? Excellent. Okay, likely or unlikely? Are you likely to attend school on a regular basis? Do you have many opportunities at home and school to receive praise and positive feedback? Do you think your teacher would know about your interests out of school? Do you participate and achieve without feeling harassed or bullied? Do you feel safe to go anywhere in the school? Will you have someone to play with during playtimes? When the class breaks into groups of choice, will you be chosen to be in a group? Would you feel comfortable talking to a teacher if you had a problem? Will you be keen to attend the next school camp? Have you got all of the equipment you need to do your schoolwork? Can you go through the school day without receiving racist or put down comments? Is it likely that you'll be invited to an upcoming birthday party held by one of your classmates? Are you comfortable speaking in front of the class? And finally, will you be doing well with remote learning in the current climate? Okay, so hopefully some of those may have been a little bit tricky and you would have been unsure about it, but hopefully you would have had a little bit of an understanding about the kind of, the sorts of things that this young person may have been experiencing. So we've got some questions there on the slide. Can I have someone who has a surname ending in A to L to respond to the questions on the slide? So who has a surname ending in from A to L?
I do.
Okay. So if you could respond to those 3 questions.
Where was my young person placed on the diversity line? She ended up at -10.
Yeah. And which was the scenario? Which was your young person?
The 9-year-old, the top one, the 9-year-old who is often late for school, doesn't have lunch, doesn't have homework.
Yeah.
There's a lot kind of going on for her. She kind of looks after her siblings more so than her parents do.
Yeah.
That's a great parent.
So how are you feeling about this, especially having gone through answering those questions in the shoes of that child? How are you feeling?
It kind of hit home. That was me. I have 8 siblings and that was pretty much my life. So to me, there was a lot that I could answer on that diversity line, knowing what the answer would be.
That's interesting that you got that one, Taryn.
Mm.
Why do you think they ended up in that -10 position?
There's a lot of factors that go along why they don't perform in school, or why, when you asked us to have a feeling about how we were feeling about looking forward to our day of school, and it was, for me, it was already fatigued, already tired. For me, it was, she's gotten up, she's had to get the siblings their breakfast, she's run late for school, she didn't pack her lunch, her mother didn't get up to pack her lunch. So it was, yeah, a lot of responsibility being put on the child is the reason that they've ended up in this position and not having that parent do so.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, Taryn. Okay, someone who was in the M to S profiles.
I was F.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got the 10-year-old hardworking, like, quiet student.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. I got oh no, where did it go? It was the 11-year-old boy, the house captain. That's the one. The bright, the distracted in class, has lots of friends. Both parents working full time. I passed the 10. I think I got like 13 or 14.
So sort of middle.
Yeah. It made me feel quite like bad, almost, like felt kind of guilty about it, because I guess I can relate to that, you know, like going through school, having what I needed and, you know, the support that I needed, but kind of taking it for granted almost. Not thinking about the people that, you know, don't have what a lot of people do. And why do I think they ended up in that position? I don't know, they talk about how the parents are both in the professional, like both had professional careers. So yeah, it's probably just like financial position of their family, and also what jobs they're in probably reflects on the way that they learn and go about school.
I think sometimes, well, from my experience, if you have both parents who are professional, you know, my husband and I both work full time, and sometimes I really feel like, you know, even though, you know, I have the knowledge and I have the skill to assist my children with their learning, I don't always have the time. I'm extremely time poor. So I think we can't just assume that if parents are well educated and, you know, there's financially secure, that doesn't necessarily mean that students are going to have that one-on-one support all of the time. So there are lots of factors, and I guess making sure that you have good communication with the parents and an understanding. I guess, you know, my son has a maths tutor, so, you know, we're in a position where we can afford to, I certainly am not a mathematician in any way, shape or form. So, you know, we are able to provide for him in that way, even though it's not one-on-one. We can employ someone to assist him in that way. So what about in the T to Z? Can I have someone who was in that area? Anyone?
I'll go. I just wasn't sure if I was the only one.
Fine, thanks, Paris.
That's okay. So I think mine was the 11-year-old girl who was house captain, talented musician, gets along well with a lot of her schoolmates, and her teachers are very engaged in the broader community and the school. And I think I could relate to a lot of this, and kind of similar to what was said before, where I felt a bit guilty as like my finger was going up the line, just seeing how privileged and how lucky she was, and I think also relating it to scenarios in my own growing up. So yeah, I think I got up to like the 14 or something like that, and I was just thinking about the other situations after reading it, and yeah, it'd be quite, you know, like you're a child, you don't understand it at that point in time, you don't understand a lot of those things, but yeah, quite interesting.
So as teachers, what can we do to help students, you know, students that are having the sorts of issues that we've talked about? What are some strategies that we might be able to use as classroom teachers, whether it be early childhood, primary or secondary? How can we help them?
Is that just making sure we know our students, Ange?
That would be a good place to start, Susie. Yeah, making sure you know them very much. And how can we do that?
I think it goes back to the example of Michelle in that video that we had to watch beforehand, and how she was saying to develop relationships, just talking to them about anything that they're doing and they seem to like doing, develop that relationship.
So those informal chats, those moments where we just have one-to-one interactions with students, and they're the times that students feel safe, they feel special, they feel supported, that someone's actually going out of their way to interact with them. So it's not just about making sure that they're learning and engaged, which is also important, but just making sure that they know that they're valued in the class, that you're there for them, and they feel knowing that when they do come to school that it is a safe place and someone there has their back. I think for me that's something that is really vital. What about more practical aspects? Any ideas?
Doing things like the breakfast club at school and stuff like that.
Yeah. Breakfast clubs, you know, making sure students have their lunches. You know, there's some wonderful scholarships and sponsorships from the Smith family and places like that, you know, to make sure that you're knowledgeable and you have contacts and you know what is available in your community to help these students that are possibly not able to access textbooks, uniforms, or breakfast and lunch, or participate in school activities. That's a really important one, to make sure that they're able to be part of the community, you know, whatever it is that you're doing in school. But, you know, excursions, I think, was one of the example questions that was asked. You know, not all children can participate in excursions because generally there is a cost involved. So we need to make sure that there are lots of opportunities where there isn't a cost involved, especially if we are in a fairly low socioeconomic area. Kylie says here that there's an amazing DVD ABC series called Life at 9. Yep, so a study over 9 years, a longitudinal study of a group of 8 Australian children from very different backgrounds. Yeah, I'm familiar with that one, Kylie. It's excellent. Yeah, definitely worth watching and very much relates to this topic. Excellent. Okay, anything else that anyone wanted to add to that? I guess, of course, differentiating for those individual students, making sure that you look at the reasons behind behaviour, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go a little bit further and look at what issues of diversity are present in those learning profiles. How does this connect with the concepts in the guest lectures, and how does this learner situation connect with the concepts in the textbook? Any thoughts? We have mentioned some already, so in some ways we have answered that, but is there anything else that anyone would like to add?
I was just going to say, when Ryan did the demonstration with the soil and the pot plants, that was very effective, and you can see why and how there'd be such a difference, which is really cool.
Yeah, so that importance of knowing if students are ready to learn, if they're in a good space to learn, how engaged are they, what are they actually taking in? So that analogy, I agree, Paris, it was wonderful. And I guess Michelle very much focused on that, the importance of knowing your students. Can we pick out any of the strategies that she used to assist in knowing students?
A lot through her dance teaching too, wasn't it? And outside, like extracurricular activity.
Definitely. She was a very big advocate, and it sounded like it was something that was a big focus of her purpose for being a teacher, wasn't it? She was very much into that social side, not just with the students, the children, but with the families as well. And, you know, that's vital. So, you know, all of those student profiles that we unpacked, it's so important that we have a good relationship with the parents and with the carers, you know, really developing communication with them, developing trusting relationships so they are willing to share any concerns with you, anything that's impacting on the students' learning and their well-being. Anything else?
What I found interesting what Michelle was talking about, and I always wondered this as well, was like, it's helping a student being biased towards them, and she was talking about how she helped a student get a B by providing more structure for them. And I think that's a good point. Like, it is okay for students who do need extra help to succeed, to help them, because like every student is different and needs more help or less help.
Oh, definitely. And you know, where some students may excel in a certain area and they might need or be gifted and they might need extra stimulation, something challenging. So we can't forget those students either, but definitely needing to differentiate for all of those individual needs and interests and strengths as well. So a very good point. Yeah, really putting, I guess, in that extra effort in as well. I remember even in year 3, I remember it so clearly. I was very, very bad with ball skills. I was a good runner, but I had a teacher, Mrs. Bradshaw, and every afternoon after school, she would stay back for a little bit of extra time, knowing that I had to wait for half an hour for the bus, and do ball skills with me. And in the end, like I think up in upper primary, I ended up being on the netball team and doing very well. So she just put that extra bit of effort. But my goodness, I remember that so much, and it really developed my confidence, and not just with my ball skills, but in myself as well. And the fact that she put that extra time and effort into me made me feel really special. So, and I think, you know, reflecting back on it, I think I was quite a shy child, and I didn't interact with a lot of students with my peers. So I think, you know, that really assisted me in that way.
My son's ASD, and year 3, he was struggling. And we actually had a teacher, and because I was studying, I knew about the Montessori method. So we installed that in for his learning, and that was literally every day she'd put up on the board what Joshua had to do for that day, and he was able to work through what he had to do, and he was able to do solo work and work by himself and just ask her if he needed to ask. But she completely changed her whole learning cycle for him so that he was able to learn in the way that he wanted to learn at that time. He's now in high school, and he remembers her as his favourite teacher.
That's great. Yeah. All of these special teachers that, you know, students don't forget, and parents don't forget either. They really do make a difference. I guess the other thing that I wanted to touch on, thanks, Tan, the other thing that I wanted to touch on was just taking into consideration that diversity of students when you're planning, when you're responding, when you're providing feedback, and acting on, I guess, inappropriate behaviour or disengagement. So acting, not reacting. So thinking about what lies behind that behaviour, thinking about all of those things that we've discussed, all of the, you know, not necessarily specifically about their learning, but the reasons that sit behind those inappropriate behaviours or disengagement. And the way we do that is, of course, by knowing our students very, very well. All right, so I guess some of the key messages, many themes from the guest speakers in the textbook, they were very much about knowing yourself and knowing your students. So our personal beliefs and also our values, they impact significantly on our personal bias and how this influences all of the decisions that we make in our learning environment. So it's very important that we have some ways of working through this, some frameworks to help you through the process of working through what your biases might be. So that could be historical. You know, we've already talked about how the way we were brought up and what we experienced as young people or as students, it really does influence what we actually do in our classrooms as well, and the way we interact with our own children as well. So it's something to think about, something very important. So what I've chosen this scenario, and so this was out of the textbook, and I just thought this was good because it's kind of, you know, significant across early childhood, primary and secondary, and I think it's just a really good provocation to think about. So we're going to unpack it in terms of a particular framework that's based on knowing yourself, knowing your students, knowing or being aware of what you don't know, and identifying possibilities and making choices about decisions in your practice. So have a read through the scenario. We're going to be discussing this in breakout groups. So if you have your phone there, I'd also like you to take a screenshot of it, because one of the, I guess one of the things with Zoom is you can't actually see the screen when you go into your breakout groups. So have a read through and take a shot of it, and I am going to organise you into your breakout groups. And when you have a good understanding of that, or you've jotted down some notes or taken a screenshot, we'll move over to the next slide that has some questions, some prompts about knowing yourself in terms of this scenario. I'll give you all a few more moments. Okay. So this first one, as I said, it's about knowing yourself. So the first, it's where you sit in regards to the issue. So I guess the importance of the issue for you. So I'd like you to screenshot or jot down these questions as well, ready to discuss in your breakout groups. So those of you who are watching the recording, I would like you to respond to these questions as well and think about why, you know, knowing yourself, how these particular questions sit with you in regards to the specific issue. So of course we have uneven numbers. No, we don't. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and in the rooms I'd like you to have a chat, and you know, it's a very personal response, this particular one, so it is thinking about your values, your habits, your attitudes, or your fears in some ways. It could be your past experiences, how your life experiences have shaped how you would instinctively respond to this scenario. So we'll probably spend about 5 or so minutes just responding to these questions. Okay, here we go. See you soon. So those of you watching the recording, if you could have a think about them, and then when the breakout rooms, when everyone comes back, we will break down some of the questions. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Excellent. So you probably wouldn't have had time to respond to all of those questions, but as prompts, hopefully you would have had the opportunity to just think a little bit about what sits behind some of those issues in terms of how, as teachers in a school environment, you might respond. So who would like to share what you discussed in your group?
We discussed in our group at a teacher level and also as a parent level. So having a child that is very good at sports, it all went to him. But then we also spoke about, it's the same children every single time. winning. So it was a compulsory event that all students had to do it. But, you know, those students know who's going to win at the end of the day. And so they're not going to ever be eligible for those 10 prizes. We also spoke about the sponsorship and stuff like that, and going, you know, me as a parent, I can take my child's sponsorship to work and get all the ladies there to fill in and sponsor my child. But a parent that doesn't work, they don't have that opportunity. So the child doesn't have that opportunity to expand and get those sponsorships and stuff like that. So there's completely different levels of what is available and how kind of unfair it is to the children.
Some very good points, Taryn. Thank you. Anything else that anyone wanted to add to that you came up with in your group?
Yeah, Ange, we were very similar, but as a parent, I said, it's funny, a couple of years ago, my son had this exact thing at school, pretty much exactly the same fundraiser. And to be honest, I didn't really think about it until now doing this unit, and how hard that would be for some of those children who have nothing, and they wouldn't be able to even get any sponsorships or be in the running, and they probably wouldn't, we were saying they probably wouldn't even turn up to school that day because it'd be very sad for them. They wouldn't. But yeah, I never really thought about it that deeply, and just always, here you go, son, here's your sponsorship money, off you go. But some kids wouldn't have access to that at all.
Definitely, it's a good point. So how are you feeling about that? So as a teacher now, looking at that situation and being given the opportunity, I guess, to possibly make a change in some way in this environment, are you feeling inspired? I got to say, I was feeling a bit outraged about it.
Yeah. Well, we said that exactly now, that the same thing, that now as a teacher, you have to be more aware of every child and their access to education, money, even equipment, shoes to do the fun run in, that you would have to be aware of your socioeconomic area of the school, and maybe that sort of fundraising event wouldn't be very appropriate in some schools.
Definitely. So the scenario, it pointed out some of the statistics, the demographics of the particular school. So that's a good point, Lauren. You really need to think about the context as well, and what's relevant for that particular context that you would be working in. But definitely, you know, my main concerns were financial, and students possibly feeling undervalued because they're not sporty. And basically, is it a fun run for everyone? It's meant to be a fun run, but not necessarily everyone would be having fun in that situation.
We looked at how you could change it to having, you know, not the top 10 win, but your PB beaters. So having it ingrained into the HPE lessons and having kids have their times. And on the day, it's whoever beats their time rather than the top 10 winners. Like we said, it's the same 3 kids throughout their whole schooling. It'll be the same 3 kids in prep, but it is the same 3 kids that finish year 6, 1, 2, 3. So we looked at how we could do it differently than just the top 3 winning all the time, and make it more so towards how the kids beat their PB.
Excellent. Keep that thought, because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But excellent, all very good points. So this one, the first one was about knowing yourself, but this second one is about knowing your students. So again, I'd like you to screenshot it, and I'm going to put you back in the same groups because you would have developed a rapport, and you would have thought a little bit and discussed it together. So the same applies, but this is about the importance of knowing your students and some questions to prompt discussion in this particular area. Okay, so here we go into the rooms. Did I give you enough time? Just a bit of differentiating. Did I give you enough time? Okay, that's good. See you soon. Okay, and once again, same applies for those of you watching the recording. If you could have a look at those questions and think about how you might respond to them. Welcome back. Okay, so anything significant? This was, I think, again, the students, the children being central, how these, situations actually impact them. What did we come up with?
We spoke a lot about parents being there and parents' interaction. So we spoke a lot about how some children have their parents that attend and that's what they expect. And then there's other students who don't have anybody and it's just another day where they watch other parents come and support their children. They don't have any support and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we focused on for this one. Yeah.
Definitely. It's a really good one. So, for me, I think students have no control, no power over money situations, over fundraising. Some of them that wouldn't be able to participate on many different levels, whether it be physically or financially, they would be, how do you think they would feel? What are the sort of feelings that these students may have?
Low self-esteem. Oh, sorry.
No,
You go.
low self-esteem, definitely. That's an important one.
Yeah. But obviously on the flip side, those kids that are really good would be really excited and really wanting and keen to participate and get their little blue ribbon and all that sort of stuff. So you've got both ends of the spectrum to those in the middle that don't really care and they'll just sort of run and it's a bit of a day out of the classroom. So I think you've got a whole mixed bag there.
Definitely. But I guess those students that there may be financial hardship, those students that don't want to participate because there's no way that they feel like they can win, those students who may be embarrassed because they don't have the $5 to pay for the lunch or don't have parents that are motivated to assist them with the fundraising, they're going to feel angry. They might feel jealous. They might feel embarrassed. And some families, they can't afford it. They may not want to participate. They may not have the time to participate. And they may actually, some parents may feel upset and stressed that they don't have the money to pay for their students to be part of it. And I guess one of the other things that I thought about as well was in terms of gender. A PlayStation. My son was incredibly excited about that, but my daughter, I don't think there would be much incentive for her to do well. So, there's lots of different things that we need to consider. A really important factor here that I wanted, you may not have got to it, but I want you to think about it. How will the issue affect the students in a practical way? So let's look at, all three levels, I guess, if we talk about it, those students that are very keen and able to participate, those ones that, as was said, it's a bit of a day out of school, and those that may want to participate but can't. What are some practical things there?
A practical thing we discussed was that it's a bit of a life lesson that they would be learning in the terms of, say, kids fundraising money and then, I guess, feeling like they did good, but then coming to school and finding out that someone else had done better. So there was a life lesson in that aspect, that there's always potential for someone else to be better than them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess for some students it might be an incentive to train harder, to work harder as well. Maybe some students who possibly have parents that aren't motivated, they might want to get out there and try and fundraise as much as they possibly can. They may use their initiative to get out there and raise a lot of money because they want the PlayStation. So, you know, there are lots of different factors. But I guess one of the things that I would be concerned about is those students that maybe don't want to participate, maybe that get sick on the day and don't actually attend because maybe they are embarrassed, or maybe they feel that they're excluded in some way, or, you know, all those reasons that we did think about. So as teachers in that school, in that classroom, I think we really need to think about how we can encourage all students to participate. So that's what it's about. It's trying to differentiate for all students to make sure everyone can have a go in one way or another.
I was just going to say something. I forgot that it was a big high school. Like, this is high school students. So there's a lot of conflict there in terms of, like, going through that puberty stage and everything, which can also be quite a big thing. So that's really interesting as well. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah. A lot of, I know in my son's school, some of his mates, their school is very sporty, and there's always, you know, the school encourages those students that aren't sporty and aren't going to participate to come along, stand in the hot sun and cheer on their team. And basically there is low attendance because at that high school level, kids just say, can I have the day off? You know, and so depending on their parents, you know, they may just let them stay at home. But, you know, many, many different factors that we need to take into consideration. So I guess I'm not going to break you into breakout groups for this one. I just want us to discuss it. So this is more, you know, it's about the third stage. It's about identifying what you don't know and how you can source knowledge or possibly support in this area to help you move forward into that next stage. So, you know, in terms of being asked to comment or make changes to this particular fun day as a beginning teacher or even an experienced teacher, what don't you know? What don't you know? What might you need to know about to assist you with this?
I suppose the process of what has to go through to actually get something like this up and running, there'd be the whole P&C with fundraising, and you'd have to know where to go to and then be very respectful when you were making any suggestions as to change anything.
That's a good point, Lauren, because, you know, a lot of these events are often run by the P&C, and fundraising is a big factor. And possibly in a school like this that is in a low socioeconomic area, possibly they need to fundraise to have books and all this sort of thing. So, you know, that's something that you need to think about. But I guess you do know, as a teacher, you do know the statistics, the family demographics, and you do know the theory behind the importance of making sure that all children are valued, that, you know, there is a diversity, and each child, each individual child will be affected in some particular way. So with that knowledge, you do feel compelled to move forward and do something about it. So I guess some of us may just not want to deal with it because it is a hard situation. And I guess you may actually have a lot of parents that may not want to change as well. So you may be concerned about the response, as Lauren said, that you might get from parents, and you would have to be very careful about how you approached it. So where might you go to get some support or some assistance to move forward? Any thoughts if you were in this situation in a school? Where might you
I'd actually firstly go and discuss it with some of the other teachers and talk through with teachers about the issue.
Excellent. Get a bit of historical background if you're fairly new to the school. How long has this been happening? What's been going on? What are the general attitudes in the school? Who might be the person that's generally running the show, the person that's behind, that's motivated? There's always people that are particularly keen to get these extracurricular things up and going, the Michelles of the world. So, yeah, definitely your colleagues. Anyone else?
Parents, if you talk to the parents.
Yeah, definitely. Possibly a questionnaire or something, just about, you know, an anonymous questionnaire about ideas or thoughts about moving forward, any ideas about making changes. It's always important to get those parents involved. The students, I think, is, again, let's talk to the students about it. What do you think about the fun run that we ran last year? Any ideas? You know, girls might say, can we have a different prize, perhaps? All those sorts of things. So, yeah, trying to get those different voices and viewpoints and making sure that, you know, the children, the students have a voice as well. And especially, you know, as Paris pointed out, this is high school. And so the students will want to voice their opinion about what they would want it to look like. So the final one, and I know some of the groups who broke out did have some discussions about moving forward, some possibilities. I think, Taryn, you had an idea, am I correct?
Yeah, we had the idea of PBs, so dating children's PBs and then making that, you know, first, second and third, whoever breaks their PB, like they do for Queensland Little Athletics and stuff.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, what information might be needed? All right, wrong one. Sorry, trigger happy here. In an ideal world, what would you like to do? What is it that's something, you know, those of you that possibly haven't spoken up yet, in an ideal world, what would you like to change in this particular situation? What is the core issue that you feel most passionate about?
I feel like it's the inclusion. I think with a fun run, if people come, there should be like this big event and maybe like free food or lollies. Like everybody should receive something that's participating.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just only be the people that are winning. Yeah.
Yeah. So it should be based on participation rather than, you know, first, second or third. I think there were 10 prizes that were given out. You know, a fun run, it could also have something to do with dressing up in a costume or working with a partner or having a team as well to get people working together, those sorts of things. So as teachers, we really need to think out of the box and make sure, as we've said, that the students are central to those decision-making, that they do have a voice as well. All right, some really good discussion there. Thank you. So I wanted to just have an opportunity. We're going a little bit over time, but there was a lot of discussion in this particular week. Before we move on to the assessment task, I just wanted to, if these were the questions that were posed in Chapter 7, and because this week the case study is very much based on what you have found significant or important in the unit, the weekly content, whether it be Chapter 7, whether it be Michelle's and Ryan's lecture or what we've talked about tonight. Is there something specific that is important to you, or that was significant in the chapter?
Ange, I really took on board the thing about tokenism, and there was an example about if you have a story with a character, I think, in a wheelchair, you don't just make the story about the character in the wheelchair. The character in the wheelchair just becomes one of the many characters. It's not just about the wheelchair, it's that it's quite normal for a child to be sitting there in a wheelchair. So not just make it a token issue that it's about the wheelchair, that it should just be that's just another child.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. That's a really good point. That's something that I really pulled out of that. And you know, there's so many, that comes down to things like the resources and the way the learning environment is set up. So making sure there are tables that wheelchairs can just seamlessly fit under, so that they don't actually feel like they're different in some way, that it's just, you know, everyone has different needs and everyone fits into the environment. You know, it's as simple as, you know, I think in Lego and things now, they have, you know, children in a wheelchair, you can get a Lego figurine. And so it all just becomes, there are so many different people in our society, and they all need to be represented in some way. So a really good point, Lauren. Is that something that you might want to focus on for your first scenario?
Yeah, actually it did. I've been talking with girls at work too, even about autism, that there's a lot of books outright coming out now, and TV shows and stories, and they're doing it with characters who are on the spectrum. And we've been discussing that, again, it's sort of like pointing them out that they're different, but then how do you include the other children to understand that they do learn differently? So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good focus. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else? Anything that made you, you know, I wonder? I think this is a really good one.
I don't know about I wonder, but I got my buttons pushed when I read there's a thing in chapter 7 about schools and teachers have high expectations of all students and not just those whom they unconsciously regard as typical high achievers. I remember dealing with the additional needs children, and for some reason people always just instantly lower their expectations of them. They're just as capable and competent of achieving if they've got the right soil, you know, that kind of stuff. And it just kind of, it winds me up when people assume that because they have either a learning disability or a physical disability that they can't then achieve. It's a very unconscious bias that drives me bonkers.
That's an excellent point, Kylie, and I can see something that you're extremely passionate about, and therefore would be the perfect choice for your reflection. So this is what it's all about. This week you need to actually think about a specific area that you're passionate about, something that pushed your buttons, or something that really made you wonder, or possibly even wanted to find more information out about. Or it could be an area that you're actually really knowledgeable about as well, and something that you find really interesting. So something specific. So moving in to assessment task 2, so our final discussion point for this evening. So Jen talked about this last week. So the case studies, there are 3 case studies that make up the assessment task. So they're 500 words each. So the first one, she's saying that it's primary. Second one is going to be an early childhood scenario, and the third one is going to be a secondary scenario. So these case studies are going to be around stimuli presented in week 8. So this week for the first one, week 10 for the second one, and week 12 for the third one. remembering, and I've said this before, I cannot stress it enough, the importance of knowing where students come from and are going to. So your specific cohort cannot sit in isolation. You need a really good understanding across all three teaching areas to be an effective teacher. So that's why we do have scenarios across all three, and why, you know, in terms of stepping into your role, we do have all three cohorts together. So as it says, each week the case study will look different, but it will always follow the same form: a stimulus presented and your response. So for this week, you get to choose between a particular stimuli. So it could be from the textbook, from the guest lectures, or it could be from a learning forum activity. So, you know, I was particularly interested in teacher quality and teacher power. So Haim Ginnett's poem about how teacher power can be manifested for good or for evil in the learning environment. I found that really fascinating. Or, you know, possibly one of the guest lectures, both Ryan and Michelle had some really inspiring discussion. We've talked tonight about Ryan's discussion and analogy around students' readiness to learn and factors that influence their processing and their engagement. Or in terms of something from this evening, it could be around your own bias, so personal bias, and how that affects our decisions in the learning environment. So the decision is yours, and my advice is that it should be something that really inspired you, something that you can reflect on personally as well, something historical possibly, or something with your own children that may be impacting on them at the moment, or may have in the past, or you might be worried about in the future. So I really want you to think about what really inspires you, and I want you to bring a draft to your next learning forum. So that's in week 10. We don't have a learning forum next week. So what I want you to do is bring a draft, but just for the first 2 R's. So reporting and responding, and then relating. So reporting and responding, so describing the specific focus, identifying its significance in teaching and learning, and then relating. So this is your beliefs and what's important to you about practice. So this is identifying the personal meaning, your skills or your knowledge. And you might also want to have a go at linking to the Australian Professional Standards. We will speak about this in the coming weeks when we look in more detail at reasoning and reconstructing. But at this point, just focus on those first 2 R's. So that will mean it will be about 150 words, because it's 300 in total, I think. Is that correct?
500 is
500, so 250 words. Thank you. So half of your final reflection. Any questions about that at this point? I really do encourage you to bring that draft in, have a go. It doesn't have to be perfect, even if you can't write out the whole thing, even dot points. And I think it's important that after each scenario that you actually work on it within that week, so that you have, you know, as a consolidation activity. So it's fresh in your mind, so you can have a go at it. So I put up this little extra slide, and just mainly because I did had the opportunity to mark all of the external students, and I also marked the Tuesday group as well before my dad passed away. So I was extremely impressed with the quality of the assessments, the assessment task 1, but the ones that really shone were those that I saw clearly engaged with the unit material and also the support resources. So these were the students that if they weren't quite sure, they sought clarification. On the slide, I've actually outlined some specific support areas that I would like to recommend to make sure you do. So carefully read the assignment task sheet and the criteria sheet. So the criteria sheet is at the end of the task sheet, and that goes into all of the really important details, and this is what your marker specifically marks off. And I did mention this last time. It was clear that some of you didn't use SiteRight to support your APA referencing. This is important. This is first year, but moving into second year, APA, attention to detail here to referencing is really important. And it's not difficult. There are very, it's very structured. So once you know the rules, it's easy for you to do. I cannot stress enough the importance of attending the student success group workshops. So the first one, using the 4R model, the second one, writing in first person, because this reflection is in first person, and proofreading strategy. So these are really good opportunities to improve your writing skills. Even if you think you're doing well, I would still recommend that you attend these sessions. Jen's frequently asked questions. Definitely have a look at those and ask questions as well. Come to the Zoom sessions. Those of you that were here this evening, wonderful discussion, and not just within the Zoom session itself, but in the breakout sessions as well. So you get to expand and discuss and to share perspectives, and that's what it's all about. Very importantly, seek clarification from your tutor. That's why we're here. Ask questions. If you're not 100% sure about anything, or even if you think you're sure, just seek clarification. Make sure that you have the right understandings. So just some points to help you out to make sure that you do very well, because most of the time it's just because you haven't read the task correctly in some cases. So very important that you seek clarification. So these student success group workshops, the details are in the assessment task 2 folder under assessment task 2 support, and you'll need to register for them. And so they run from, the first one is on Tuesday, May the 5th. So that's next week. So you do need to register for them.
So Angela, if you can't attend them, but you want to watch the videos that hopefully will be recorded, do you still need to register? Because it's not like I don't want to do it, it's just I'll be working.
I get that completely, Belinda, and we had this discussion before, and I would imagine that they will be recorded. I know Jen and Crystal are working towards doing that, and especially in this current situation where our essential workers, as many of you tonight are, practicing teachers, I think it's very important that we can do that. But for those of you who are listening to the recording and possibly do have some free time during the days, I would definitely recommend that you join these sessions and participate. I think it's very important because you can come with questions. I guess the issue with watching a recording, you don't have the opportunity to ask questions and you're not there in real time. But yeah, so don't always rely on the recordings. But I don't think you would need to register in answer to that question, Belinda, if you were going to watch the recordings. There's no point in registering if you're not going to be there. Sorry, It took me a while to get around that. I did answer it eventually. I guess what I'm trying to discourage those of you that are able to attend, I'm trying to encourage you to attend rather than watching the recording if you are able to attend. That's my point. Okay, any questions at all? I know, what time have we got?
Yes, I've got one. So, sorry, for example, for the reflection for this week, if I was to choose, say, Ryan, for example, and I wanted to do it on his theory on students being ready to learn, could I just reflect on myself agreeing with his thoughts and dive deeper into why that's a theory on children not being ready?
A very, very good question. So you wouldn't so much be reflecting specifically on Ryan. You might mention that the provocation of the watching the guest lecturer speak made you think about this particular topic, but you focus on the topic and your personal take on it. If we have a look at so that reporting and responding, the first one, it's basically retelling what the actual critical incident is that you're talking about. Yeah. So it would relate, I guess, to you personally as well, going into the relating section. This might have connections with you yourself, your own strengths, improvements that you might need to make in the area. So it's in first person, so lots of I statements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a really quick question about the reflection itself. So the example that was given, I think, last week, and it was like a written example, the components of the reflection with the 4 R's was very scattered, and I got a bit overwhelmed with that. So is it okay to be very structured with it? So the first thing you do is you report and respond, and then the next thing you relate. Is that okay, or is it have to be scattered like this?
I have mine here too.
Twinning! I was trying to understand it.
I agree, because when I did the activity and I followed Jen's directions, I was kind of looking for that structure as well. So I would probably do that, Paris, just for me, that's how I think. Yeah, as Jen said, this isn't a perfect example. There were some areas that could have been expanded more, so that's important to remember that. But I really like the way Jen picked out those specific areas and it really made it clear exactly what she meant by reporting and relating and reasoning, and then the that final area of reconstructing, so making connections to your professional practice.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Thank you.
I wondered the same thing.
Yeah.
Can you put that in the frequently asked questions? Can you?
Is it on the Padlet or?
I'm assuming that the Padlet. I saw the frequently asked questions, or it could actually be. How about you email Jen about it?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Because it's not something that I have specifically discussed with her.
Okay.
So it might be a good idea to email her, and she'll add that to the frequently asked questions as well, just so we have a
reference
answer from her.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Telling you something that is incorrect, but I'm the same as you. I like things to be structured, and also from a marker's perspective as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys picking out the individual bits would be a bit of a nightmare.
Correct. Yeah. So be kind to the markers.
Yeah, okay. Will do.
Okay. Really good question. Anyone else?
Yeah, Ange, do you suggest doing a bit of research into it as well? For example, the one I said about the tokenism really interests me, but I'm not extremely educated on it. So do you suggest doing some research into whatever we're passionate about?
I think so. Like it's, that's what teachers do. Definitely look further into it. So 3, reason, that's the connection between reflection and the theory. So you should explore the relationship between theory and practice and seek a deep understanding of why something has happened. So I'm going to have a look at the criteria sheet. Do I have that here? Yeah. So I'm looking at the reasoning section in the criteria sheet, and it says reflections have highlighted factors that underlie the incident or issue. Sophisticated explanation as to why this issue is important and draws upon relevant APST, theory, and literature to support reasoning. And I'm reading, of course, from the high distinction column.
Okay, thank you. I should have read it a bit better.
No, early days, but I cannot stress enough. This is super important. See, I've even got the high distinction highlighted. Really important that you go through if you do want to do very well, because as I said, this is specifically what your grader will look at. So the task sheet, it gives you the details, the specifics, but the criteria sheet, it goes into more depth. Good question, Lauren. Anyone else?
Thank you.
There was someone else that had a question.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat with the FAQ Padlet. Where actually is it? Because I can't find it under the Assessment 2 folder. I don't know.
I don't think Jen's actually got a Padlet up this time. She may put one up. How about we find out some information about that and get back to you about it, Sophie?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good question again. Thank you. Okay. Anything else before we finish up? Okay, so as I always do, I'm going to go away and give you the opportunity to just have a chat. It may be about the assessment. It may be about what's happening in your schools at the moment. Actually, before I finish, there is, I told you that there is no learning forum next week in week 9. It's about pedagogy, but there will be a recorded seminar. But also, as well as the student success group workshops for assessment item 2 starting, Jen did mention that there are also some Landtite workshops that the student success group are putting on. So that's something that you might want to consider. So if you have a look at the student success group, I think it's the Blackboard site, you'll be able to find out about those Landtite workshops. All right, so I normally go away for about 15 to 20 minutes or so, so that you can have a chat, catch up socially. What I'll do is I will stop the share. Can you all see the gallery view now? Yep. Yeah. Excellent. And of course, we'll all say good evening to the people watching the recording at home, and we shall see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.